At 81 years old, I've realized that men are often held captive by their own biology. From the time we are boys, we are taught that our virility and our drive are the primary measures of our strength. We are told that if that fire starts to fade, we are somehow fading as men. But today, I want to talk about the truth no one tells you, because most men are simply too afraid to face it. I want to talk about what life is really like when that constant demanding roar of desire finally quiets down. This isn't a eulogy for your youth. It's an invitation to a different kind of freedom. Go ahead and get comfortable. Let me say this clearly. This is a conversation most men are too proud or too scared to have. We spend decades being driven by a force that is as beautiful as it is exhausting. It dictates who we talk to, how we dress, and how we spend our energy. But at 81, the view is different. I've learned that when the smoke of physical desire clears, you can finally see the landscape of your life for what it really is. This may surprise you, but I spent years worrying about losing it. I feared the day I wouldn't feel that hunger anymore. But when that day came, I didn't feel diminished. I felt relieved. Think about the amount of mental energy you have spent in your life chasing intimacy. The dates, the performances, the worries about performing, and the constant need for validation through another person's body. Most men never hear this, but your masculinity is not a flame that has to be fed by physical conquest. For a long time, I thought that if the drive slowed down, the man inside was dying. This belief was a heavy burden that drained my soul for decades. It was a high price to pay for a sense of worth that was always dependent on someone else. Let's be very honest here. This was my path. I'm not saying this is a universal rule for every man on earth, but for me, when I hit 60 and realized that my priorities were shifting, a deep healing began. It wasn't that I became incapable. It was that I became indifferent to the chase. It was like a fever had finally broken. For the first time, I was looking at people for who they were, not as goals to be achieved. I was looking at my time as a resource for my own peace. Stop for a second. Does the thought of your sexual drive slowing down feel like a loss to you? Or does it feel like a weight being lifted? Be honest in the comments. There is no judgment here, only the search for truth. Something I misunderstood for most of my life was the nature of intimacy. We often confuse sex with connection. We think that if we aren't active in the bedroom, we are destined to be lonely. But here is the reality. At 81, I know that the most intimate moments of my life have happened with my clothes on. They happened in a deep conversation over coffee or in the shared silence of a sunset. I stopped looking for a fire outside of myself because I finally learned how to keep my own soul warm. This fear of becoming invisible was a burden I carried far too long. If I could go back, I'd tell my younger self, "You are not a machine. You are a human being." The transition away from a sex-driven life is not a descent into the shadows. It is a movement toward the light of clarity. The men who are comfortable with this change are the ones who have found a purpose bigger than their impulses. For me, choosing to embrace this quiet phase wasn't a retreat. It was a graduation. The world wants you to stay obsessed with youth. They want you buying pills and seeking treatments to chase a version of yourself that no longer exists. They want you distracted because a man who isn't driven by his lower instincts is a man who is very hard to control. One error I finally corrected was letting the alpha myths of society dictate how I felt about my aging body. I spent too many years feeling ashamed of a natural, beautiful slowing down of the clock. Most men never hear this, but there is a profound power in being a man who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. Men talk a lot of bravado. We pretend we are the same at 70 as we were at 20, but that's a lie that keeps us disconnected from our own wisdom. My life turned around when I stopped trying to prove I was still a stud and started proving I was a sage. I stopped looking for a physical thrill and started looking for spiritual depth. This was my choice, and it quietly gave me back my joy. Have you ever felt the exhaustion of trying to perform when your heart and mind were actually craving something deeper? That struggle is a thief of peace. Sharing your experience might help a younger man realize he's not broken. He's just evolving. I used to think that a life without sexual activity would be a life without color. I thought it would be gray and dull. This may surprise you, but the colors are actually more vivid now. When you aren't looking at the world through the lens of desire, you see the details you missed. You see the kindness in a stranger's eyes. You feel the texture of the wind. I discovered that a quiet life isn't a dull life, it's a precise life. This is what I call the post-desire clarity. Sex, while beautiful, creates a lot of emotional and mental static. When that static fades, you find out who you really are. You find out what you actually enjoy doing when you aren't trying to impress anyone. By choosing to accept this path, I allowed the chaser in me to finally rest. I stopped stirring the pond of my hormones and let the water become crystal clear. I chose a quiet spirit over a restless body. Again, this was my path, and it led me to a peace I never knew existed. There is a specific ironclad dignity in being a man who no longer seeks validation through intimacy. It's the ability to sit with yourself and feel whole without an audience. If you feel that your interests are shifting away from the chase and toward the garden, the woodshop, or the library, don't fight it. It's not giving up, it's moving up. You are graduating from the physical realm into the realm of the mind and soul. Let me say this clearly. Think about the sheer amount of time you've spent in your life managing the complications of attraction, the heartbreaks, the misunderstandings, and the constant maintenance of an image. After 60, I realized that my time was too short for those complications. I wanted the full version of my consciousness, not the version that was always scanning the room. I decided that my remaining years were for my own exploration. It's never too late to reclaim your manhood from the hands of your biology. Even at 81, I feel more like a man than I ever did at 25. Why? Because my strength now comes from my character, not my chemistry. I am no longer a slave to a drive I can't control. I am the master of my own tranquility. This realization finally brought me the rest I had been looking for since I was a teenager. I spent years proving my manhood, but the peace of just being a man was worth the wait. As you look at your own journey, ask yourself, are you fighting your body, or are you listening to it? Is the lack you feel real, or is it just the ghost of society's expectations? I turned the world's volume down, and I turned my own wisdom up. This transition wasn't a loss of power, it was a refinement of it. This may not be for everyone, but for those who seek it, the reward is total freedom. Before I leave you, I have a request. If this honest conversation about the truth no one tells you touched you, please subscribe to the channel. My mission is to share these 81 years of perspective with men who are navigating these changes in silence. If you found a sense of peace in these words, hit that like button. It helps this message reach another man who thinks he's losing his edge when he's actually gaining his soul. And please share your thoughts in the comments. How has your perspective on intimacy changed as you've gotten older? What did you find in the quiet that you didn't expect? I read every comment. Your honesty is what builds this community. You don't have to be 81 to understand that your value isn't located in your drive. It's located in your heart and your mind. You can decide today to stop mourning what was and start celebrating what is. You can start a new chapter where your peace is your primary drive. A man's life isn't defined by his sexual peak. It's defined by the peace he keeps and the wisdom he leaves behind. Don't fear the slowing down. It's in that space that you find the man you were always meant to be. Take care of yourself, my friend. Your value is eternal. And remember, strength isn't about the fire in your blood. It's about the peace in your soul.